We're back again to talk about aviation. Paul Brennan here in Wellington. And Martin, are you still in the land of the bouncing kangaroo?
I certainly am. I'm still in Melbourne, yep.
Yeah. The economy hasn't collapsed since we last talked?
Not yet, no.
Okay, can't be too far away now.
Seems to be going all right, actually.
Hey, you must be able to get cheap Falcons and Holdens now, because if they're going out of production, the popularity must be waning quickly. What's the status of those vehicles? Are they going out at bargain prices?
No, not yet. In fact, some of the more sought-after models, like the V8 Utes and all that, are actually picking up a bit of a premium at the moment.
Oh.
They're still going to be supported, I think, dealer direct for the next 15 years at least, and then of course it's going to be aftermarket parts for the next 50.
Right.
So it's not like they're going to suddenly disappear.
No, but there'll be no new models, and the whole
No new models.
cultural attachment to them might just sort of go.
Well, that's been waning for, I don't know, probably the last 10 years now. You certainly don't see many anymore.
And I wonder what this will do for the racing, because if there are no Holden or Ford rivalry opportunities left, that's a big part of the Australian motor racing industry gone there. Well, the culture of it.
Yeah, that's why last year and this year they started letting in Volvo, Mercedes,
right.
The other brands are racing in the V8s now to try and keep people interested.
Gone are the days when you see an old Tirana going over Mount Panorama.
No, that's long gone, yeah.
Yeah, long gone. All right, aviation, first story we'll look at is a local one, and news in the last few days that at the IATA conference, the Association of International Airlines or Air Transport or something like that, in Miami, our Air New Zealand head John Luxon and the head of Air India, Martin, have signed a deal, a codeshare for Air New Zealand customers to get all the way through to India via Singapore. 90,000 Indians come to New Zealand holidaying every year, so quite a market. So this is a progressive move.
Be a cheap way to Europe as well. Air India fly all the way.
Well,
they're not an expensive airline.
When you sign a deal like that, you're obviously trusting in that carrier as a good carrier. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having a relationship that close. Air India have been under question marks in the past.
It's not so much they've had safety issues, but they have had some, or recently haven't had safety issues. They have had some very interesting maintenance practices, though, which involve stripping aeroplanes that are less than a year old and bolting the parts onto other aeroplanes that are less than a year old. At one time, there was essentially a hulk of a 777 LR and a severely dismantled 787 in India. So it's interesting, but not to say it's not safe.
There have, though, been some stories lately about faked hours and qualifications, perhaps more applicable to the domestic carriers there, the low-cost carriers, and there's some quite big ones there. But again, you trust that they know what they're doing. Obviously, it comes up to standard. But this will mean cheap fares for New Zealanders and ease of travel to those Indian destinations. Is that what that means?
Certainly ease of travel, because I think they all stop in Australia, but then it's Auckland, Sydney, Delhi,
right,
all the way. And like I said, Air India traditionally offer quite cheap tickets through to Europe. So,
well, they're saying Singapore. So will that make more of Air New Zealand's service to Singapore?
Maybe that's what they're hoping for, because, of course, from Singapore, Air India services quite a few cities within India. So if you don't want to go to Delhi and then fly somewhere else, yes, you're better off flying Singapore and then to Singapore and then choosing the Indian city of your choice.
And that also gives more selling opportunities to Air New Zealand on that sector, with passengers not necessarily just wanting to go to Singapore.
Well, I suspect that's how it'll work. I doubt Air India is coming to Auckland.
No, they're not. No,
yeah, so it'll be you either pick up the Air India flight in Sydney or you pick it up in Singapore.
What do they do out of Singapore? Is it A3 narrow bodies or...?
Yes, you do see the odd narrow body there because, it's not far. It's only, 4 hours away.
All right, so that comes into action soon, they said. They don't put a date on it, but they say it's soon.
Yeah, it'll be good, I reckon. More competition, always good. Further afield, quite interesting, because of this IATA conference, there's a whole lot of snippets of information coming out. Walsh, the head of BA, or IAG as it's now called,
yep,
he said something interesting because there was at the conference they were speaking out against sole source engine suppliers for planes. Basically, the airlines have said they'd much prefer choice. Of course, the manufacturers don't care for that, but And one thing Walsh said was that if the 747-8 had been offered with Rolls-Royce engines as an alternate, it would have been far, how do you say, the competition between it and the A380 would have been much closer than it was. As it was, it wasn't even considered because BA did not want any more GE engines on their Boeings because they've got a bit of a problem with GE at the moment. On the 777s, apparently, due to sole source and overpriced spares. This is the theory.
Right, okay. Now, that sole source deal is between Boeing and GE and goes back quite a long way, doesn't it?
Yes, to the extent that GE actually goes out on a limb and helps, basically pays for the development of the engine without any input from the airframe builder. They run it at a risk, hopefully that they'll sell a lot of them. And, of course, it's similar for Rolls-Royce on the A350, and now, of course, for Rolls-Royce on the A380, because the Engine Alliance is no longer going to do any development on the GP 7200. Therefore, it's highly unlikely that anybody will buy that engine anymore on the A380.
They must be doing that because they don't think there are any more sales.
They don't think there's any more sales, and apparently for Rolls-Royce, it's a very simple evolution of their existing engine, and a lot of the performance improvement packages that they develop for the A350 and this type of thing can be made to fit onto the A380 version of the engine. But for GE and Pratt & Whitney, that engine was basically a bit of a orphan. So any development of that would only be for that, and so they weren't interested. So
the potential sale Boeing to BA for 747-800s would have been about the same level as the number of A380s they eventually purchased?
Well, of course, that's the big question, because people are saying no, it would have probably been for more, because they would have probably not bought so many 300 ERs.
Yeah, because the 747-400 fleet was like up to 50 at one stage, wasn't it? It was huge. Yeah,
just over 50.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's interesting.
So that was interesting. Airbus have said that they are not, they've still said they're not going to do a NEO. They're going to concentrate on increasing the number of passengers while still providing the passengers with the same amount of room, and they reckon they can do this similar to what they've done on the A320 by rearranging galleys and crew rest areas and all this type of thing, and they reckon they can get quite a few more seats into the A380, which will further improve its economics. They might add some wingtips, some slightly different wingtips. They're still lightening the plane as we go, so that's interesting. Of course, there's that story out there that United Airlines might take the undelivered Skymark A380s. There's always talk about someone going to take them. Was Turkish, blah, blah, blah. We'll see what happens. There's a very interesting article or analysis by Aspire Aviation that basically compare the A350-900 with the Boeing 787-9 and the 787-1 or 10 or 787-1000. Mm-hmm. That's very interesting, because if you look at things like weight, so for example, an A350-900 with 315 passengers, which is right in the middle of what it can take, and a 787-900 with 291 passengers, which again is a representative load, the Airbus it's about 13 tons heavier, but on a 6,500 mile flight with a headwind of 38 knots, blah, 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 it uses 2.3 litres per passenger versus 2.5, which you've got to feel sorry for Boeing, because, I mean, it's not that that's a huge difference, and it comes down to how many people are on the plane and all the rest of it, but you just imagine if Boeing hadn't had those problems early on and they'd got that plane out the door 4 years or on time, they would own the market.
They would, big time.
Huge.
So how come with that weight difference, is it just that much more efficient, is it?
Well, yes.
The wing and the engines
and a lot of this analysis is based upon figures that they've managed to extract from Qatar, who are flying the 787, and they say it's over 6% more efficient than anything they've got.
Gosh. Okay, well, so will you see a spurt in sales, I wonder?
Well, I wonder that. It hasn't sold badly. Paris Air Show is just around the corner, so who knows what we'll see.
I got to say, it looks great in airline colours.
It does look great, and the fact that it doesn't quite have the range that the Boeing product does doesn't seem to be affecting anybody or influencing anybody because the range difference is very small. And even though it's less, it's still enormous.
Yeah, and the missions that go to that edge of the range are quite limited.
Yeah, minuscule.
The next delivery of 787 to Air New Zealand is the actual prototype of the 9.
Oh, wow. Oh, of course. Okay. So that's what happened.
Yeah, it's been refitted, it says here.
That must be dirt cheap.
But obviously they haven't altered it too much, otherwise it'd be uncertifiable,
The current longest ranging plane, which is what, the 777-200LR, Emirates, there's a rumour out there that they're looking at buying 10 more.
What would they use them for? Because they have, about over 9,000 nautical mile range?
Yeah, well, that would let them do sort of Dubai Chile and this type of thing, wouldn't it? Or Dubai, basically Dubai anywhere.
Yeah. Can you handle staying on a plane that long?
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
That performance of that model is quite extraordinary. They're saying that it gets off with a full load in 40-degree plus heat.
I think that's probably why they want it. It's not so much for the 9,000 miles range. It's for 7,500 miles to the top of some mountain.
And also it has quite a large cargo capacity as well.
Yes. That's another interesting thing that they were talking about at the IATA is how precipitously the requirement for dedicated freighters is falling.
Is that because the underfloor holds are that big now, or has there been a downturn?
No, there's so much space on the big airliners now. So it's apparently over 50% of all air freights now move in passenger planes.
And you're down to outsized stuff, I guess, oil rig pieces and stuff that can only go on a 7.4 or something.
And things like laptops and that, where you don't want too many batteries in the hold of your passenger plane.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that doesn't bode well for the 748.
No. Another interesting game, this time by Boeing. There's going to have to be a production gap between the current 777 family and the new 777 family, which is due to come online, 2019, 2020, etc.
Right.
So to keep the shareholders happy, they're desperate to maintain the current production rate, which I think is 6 a month. I'm not sure. Could check. But
it's a few.
It's a few. The last thing they want to do is have to scale that back because that upsets the shareholders because it means cash is not coming in. But a lot of commentators have been saying that for some time it's going to be very difficult for them to maintain that production without heavily discounting planes, which they also don't want to do, because, of course, everyone's holding back for the new one, which again will be discounted so they can get it off the line and start making lots of them. So they have finally admitted, after blacklisting some of the journalists that had the temerity to suggest that the production rate would fall.
It sounds like the sports world. That's what teams do to sports journalists if they say nasty things.
Similar sort of things. No, they've been having closed briefings and not inviting this newspaper, not inviting that newspaper.
Oh dear, because they dared to say something.
Tell the truth, So finally they've admitted that they've given a briefing as to what they think will happen. And they use an unfortunate turn of phrase, is that they're going to maintain the production capacity while occasionally firing blanks down the line.
Firing blanks?
Yeah, that's what she said. Firing blanks down the line, which will in no way affect the output of the factory, but of course it will result in less aircraft, because what they mean by firing a blank down the line is an empty production slot. So they'll still be producing 6.8 aircraft a month, but maybe only 4 will come out.
What, do they go through the same sort of time frame as a real plane for the gap to move through?
Well, that's what they'd have you think. In reality, instead of producing 6, they just produce 4, but slower.
Yeah, well, that's like the capital gains tax you don't have when you're having one.
Yes, it's like the non-capital gains tax.
Yeah,
yes.
No, it's the tax on capital gain rather than a capital gains tax.
Yes.
It's that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, well, in the end, depending on the production level that they can maintain for aircraft that do go to customers, they may get ground down into offering them really cheap.
Well, this is what's probably going to have to happen because according to the analysts out there who are looking at the trends for 777 sales, they're actually hundreds of aircraft down if they don't want a production gap.
Yeah. Well, they better hope that there's big sales of the new ones. But there are a lot of orders, aren't there? So
Yeah. Unfortunately for American business, most of the orders are from the Middle Eastern 3.
Now, We've talked sort of about this rivalry that's been going on, but it's now more than that, isn't it? It's a slanging match full bore between certain CEOs of the big American carriers, I think Delta and American specifically, and the group they call the M3, the Middle Eastern Three, which is what? Emirates, Etihad, and what's the other one?
Qatar.
Qatar is an emirate, isn't it? Yes, it is.
Yes, but it's not part of the Emirates Airlines group.
Right, but those are the three. And it's really sort of got personal, hasn't it? This fight.
It has. Now, of course, the Americans are trying to restrict access to the American market. They're backed up by Lufthansa and a lot of the European ones. Alitalia is in a bit of a tricky position because half of Alitalia belongs to Etihad, as does half of Air Berlin. So things are getting a bit mixed up there. But Lufthansa has managed to get frequency and access restricted in Germany. Lufthansa owns Austrian Airlines and Swiss Airlines, whatever they're called now. So they've managed to restrict access to those markets. The Americans would love to do the same. Of course, they've got these open skies agreements that America negotiated for the benefit of America back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when Dubai was a grass field with a Dakota trundling around on it.
Yeah. No one ever thought it could ever be anything more than that.
No one ever thought it would be anything. And now, of course, when the competition becomes actual competition, the Americans are not happy, as usual, actually, to be honest.
Yeah, but it's sort of obvious that they're being nasty sports, isn't it?
Well,
I mean, whether or not you like the way the Middle Eastern Three go about things and you like the way of life of those cultures or whatever, it's sort of irrelevant in the business side. But you get the feeling that the American carriers are trying to almost change the rules.
Yes, that's exactly what they're trying to do.
In a sort of unfair fight, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't suit them, therefore they need to change the rules. Now, they can bang on and on about how the airlines over there are unfairly subsidized and da-da-da-da. And, of course, it's completely different and blah, blah, blah. But how often have the American airlines had bankruptcy protection?
And after 9/11, they got given billions of dollars of cash.
Billions of dollars, tax breaks, all sorts of things. So, I mean, there's one thing to complain, but there's maybe they're not complaining about the right thing. Now, Lufthansa and KLM this week also announced something quite interesting. They are going to try and take the fight to the Middle Eastern Three in terms of quality.
Well, that's the way you do it,
yes,
isn't it? You compete at that level.
You have to try.
Yeah, rather than get your government or your friendly politician to change the rules under their feet. But here's the thing. The American business for these three carriers is not even a major part of their business.
No, it's less than 11% of Emirates' annual traffic.
Yeah.
So it's nothing.
So basically their problem, the American CEO's problem, is they don't rule the skies anymore.
No, not at all.
Things have changed.
In no way do they come anywhere near ruling the skies.
There we go.
Not like the old days of Pan Am and that, eh?
Well,
WA.
They probably still, in a way, think they should still have that status, but they're really just North Atlantic carriers and dropping into Europe and a bit like that these days. They're not really global carriers anymore, are they, the American carriers?
No.
Not like in the old days. And I see the first metals being cut on the 737 Max.
Yes, that was actually in the papers here. It seems that some of the metal that's being cut is destined for a Virgin 738 Max.
Ah, okay. So that means what? It's about a year away from flying, or?
I guess. Year away from flying and 18 months, 2 years away from delivery.
Yeah. Boy, they'll be looking to crank those things out, won't they?
Yeah, but geez, they've left it too late.
Yeah, but they do have sales.
Yes,
Plenty
they do.
of them. They got a few thousand, I think, ordered.
Yeah, they do. They've done really well. But, it's, even some Boeing engineers have apparently been saying that you're trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear. They should have just actually taken the initiative away from Airbus and come up with that new plane everyone's been talking about and, dominated for the next 20 years.
Too easy to keep on while people are buying.
Well, this is what happens with quarterly reporting and shareholder value. You'll never take a hard decision.
Yeah.
And this is what the old-timers are saying. And they say that the old-timers are saying this is the difference that McDonnell Douglas management made to Boeing.
Yeah, that one keeps coming up, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I bet they hate hearing that being said.
I bet you they do. The introduction into service for the first Maxes with Southwest Airlines in 2017.
There you go. Well, that's not far away at all.
No.
And I see you were right about Malaysian Airlines. They're cutting 6,000 jobs, like you said, and rationalising the fleet. No word on the new brand, but I think it was admitted that they were going to completely rename it.
Yes.
It'll be interesting to see how they go there.
It will be. You feel sorry for them, and I've flown them. They were good.
Yeah. Yeah, they sort of almost really didn't deserve this, did they?
No, but once they started getting shot down, I must admit they didn't. They weren't very high on my list of airlines to fly.
I wouldn't like to be the ad man with the job of trying to market your way or advertise your way out of that problem. I just don't think it's doable. It's not possible. How do you even broach it? It's not often, Martin, that things change at Wellington Airport, not until that runway is extended anyway, and we have all those international flights coming in from exotic destinations, like probably Adelaide or Darwin
Dubai.
or something. some place on the way that the Middle Eastern 3 stop at, on the way.
Well, maybe that's why Emirates wants to get the 200 LRs. Maybe they want to do direct to Wellington.
10 of them, they're going for high frequency, huh?
Yeah, well, why wouldn't you?
5 flights a day.
Yeah.
Some change coming up in the form of Fiji Air, used to be Air Pacific, back at Wellington. They were here in the late 90s, had a service up to Nadi that 737-500s used to fly. But they've got 737-800s, I think, now coming to Wellington from June 25th for services to and from Nadi. And, of course, you can go up to LA from there and off to Japan. And they go quite a few places around the Pacific, Air Pacific, or Fiji Air as it is now. So that brings another tail into the mix.
Be a nice way to go to America, wouldn't it?
I've done it a couple of times, gone Auckland, Fiji, Los Angeles. They've had specials over the years. Got to wait around a bit in Nadi. And, those Indian duty-free sellers are pretty hardcore, trying to make you buy stuff.
And you always do?
I didn't. The worst smelling room I've ever been in is the smoking room at Nadi Airport. It's like it's never, ever been deodorised since probably 1951.
We're sponsored by the Health Ministry.
And they used to fly those ex-Singapore 747-400s,
Oh, yes, they did, yeah.
And I went up to the States on those a few times. But out of Wellington, that's good. I'm sure that Wellingtonians will like that.
Well, if you're going to go to America and you're not bound to the Koru system, you've got to stop in Auckland. You might as well stop in Fiji and take a day or two off.
Surely Air New Zealand should have exploited that opportunity. Wellington through to Nadi, A320.
Yeah, well, it's always surprised me, A, how few, and B, how expensive flights to the islands are from Wellington.
Yeah, well, they're offering up to LA return from Wellington for $1,300 at the moment. Fiji Air, yeah.
Oh, that's not bad.
So it's 737 to Nadi and then A330-200 to Los Angeles.
How long is the flight to Nadi?
It's 3.5 hours, 3:45 from Wellington.
Okay, so it's about the same distance as Australia.
Yeah.
What alliance are they in?
I don't know if they are in one.
Well, they'll have their own, I guess.
They go to quite unusual places around the Pacific, to little islands and things like that,
Oh, I'm pretty sure they fly everywhere, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they really connect the place up. They got a great little business going there, I think. Anyway, so they're going to be coming to Wellington. June 25th is the start date of that service. There's another thing to look out for.
Founded by Harold Gatty in 1947.
Air Pacific.
Fiji Airways.
Or Fiji Airways, as it's now called.
Yeah.
They've had all sorts of types. They had the BAC 111 back in the day. What else? 7.3s, of course. I think they might have had a 7.2 leased for a while, maybe. Qantas has supported them for quite a long time. They've had
They're offering Melbourne to Los Angeles return for $1,170.
Melbourne to LA return.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what do they go into Melbourne with? Is that 737-800 probably?
Yeah, I presume so.
Yeah, okay. They used to run the 74 to Sydney and Auckland from time to time. Anyway, so...
Just looking at their fleet, they've got 3 A330-200s, 4 737-800s, and 1 700.
Yeah, and that's it, is it?
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, there you go. So the 76 is gone. They used to have a 767-300.
I've seen that, yeah. And I've seen the 747s in Japan.
Obviously, they'll be in the desert now, I would imagine.
That's where I saw the 767s as well in Japan.
They had a 767-200 way back as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, they've had all sorts, you know.
grumpy little thing.
Yeah, but probably quite good around the Pacific. It's the sort of thing you can fly all the way to the States from Nadi, you know. They're quite a good range, those 200 ERs.
Yes, and I didn't know that Air New Zealand doing Auckland, Japan, it's right up there with the sort of top 10 longest 767-300 ER flights people do.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. They used to fly them all the way to LA in New Zealand via Tahiti.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, you could go LA, Papeete, and then on to Auckland, you know, and back the other way as well. Anyway, well, that's about it for another week. And again, not really time to squeeze in that airplane of the week. The day jobs are just too busy at the moment for doing the research, Martin.
It really is.
But we can easily talk about the current events in aviation. So that's it for another fortnight. When are you back in NZ? Are we doing the next program from the studio?
No, I'll be here for the next program, but the one after that, I'll be in Wellington.
All right. Until then, you've been listening to Paul Brennan in Wellington and
Martin Noakes, still in Melbourne.
see you around.
Cheers.